Look at this, look at this, look at this. This thing has been functioning for hundreds of years. Since before the beginning of modern time.
This is mechanical time, isn't it?
You bet it is. This machine is what constitutes humanity's first real break from the world of nature. Wouldn't you say so?
The clock did much more than that. It became the model of the cosmos. People got the idea that nature was just a giant clock, not a living organism, but a machine. Well, Descartes was the primary architect of the view that sees the world as a clock. A mechanistic view that still dominates most of the world today.
It worked, didn't it?
Yes, so successfully that scientists came to believe that all living things are nothing but machines. And that's the fallacy. It carried over into everything. Arts, politics. A pendulum, for example, has long since been replaced by a tiny quartz crystal. That's how far modern science has left mechanistic thinking behind. Let's take the population problem. You can't solve it by looking at different forms of birth control in isolation. Research has proven again and again that the most effective form of birth control is economic and social gains, which will reduce the desire for large families. Do you know that in our world, every day 40,000 children die from malnutrition and preventable diseases? It's now. Do you know that they are destroying the Amazon rainforest at the rate of 1 football field a second? Now. Why? They don't even have time to sell the timber, so they're setting fire to the woods. And our barren forests are one of the main causes of the global warming, the greenhouse effect. In the meantime, we are pouring our money into the arms race. But don't you see that all these new technologies, they're causing more problems than they solve? In medicine, for example, there's been an overwhelming increase in technology, but the costs have spiraled concurrently. It's become medicine for the rich. And public health hasn't improved significantly, although public health would improve dramatically if we just changed our eating habits, for example.
All right, supposing that you're right and everything is connected to everything else, where do you start?
By changing the way we're seeing the world. You don't see that all the problems simply are fragments of one single crisis, a crisis of perception.
A person goes to a doctor today with recurring attacks of gallstones, and the doctor takes the gallbladder out, and lo and behold, the pain goes away. Fact is, the patient is out of his pain, he's feeling better, and the clock is ticking again.
Let's say the gallbladder is out and the pain is gone. But what about the stress that might have brought the illness on? Or let's say he had changed his nutrition much earlier and done some exercise. He may never have developed the gallstones in the first place. See, a little health education might have been much cheaper than the operation. A lot less painful, too. But our system doesn't encourage prevention, it encourages intervention. See, my point isn't to condemn Descartes' thinking. It's simply to recognize its limitations. It's not only inaccurate, it's actually harmful. We need a new vision of the world.
Let's say it turns out to be true. Cattle are brutally treated, loaded up with chemicals, too much red meat is bad for you, and the landscape's being wrecked by overgrazing. So for good health and 100 other reasons, I help enact a tax on the consumption of red meat.
What a wonderful idea. We could do cancer and heart research for the revenue.
Yes, and I'd have 50 lobbyists pounding on my door, because when you get that far out in front of public opinion, that's the way they let you know. So I do what everybody else does, from the lowliest congressman right on up to the President of the United States.
This is why I don't vote. Excuse me, it's what we've been talking about. You get people to eat less red meat, and then you do something like paying off the farmers, buying up surplus butter and subsidizing its price. So if we don't get a heart attack one way, you'll just find another way to give it to us.
I mean, are you going to be the one who tells everyone what's good for them? Are you going to tell a farmer that there's something wrong with the goals that he and his family have pursued for generations, and then, what, just shut them down?
Wouldn't it be a challenge for a great political leader to bridge the gap, to inform, to allow us to feel responsibility? But the people don't trust you politicians anymore. At your last election, only 50% of them even bothered to vote.
They think this is the movies, but this room is absolutely contemporary. Everybody's got a torture chamber now. They don't even notice. Are you going to say this is part of your crisis of perception, too? You'd like to blame this on Descartes. This is such a part of human history.
Well, I don't know about Descartes, but I do know that Francis Bacon presided over the witch trials of King James I at a time when millions of women were tortured or burned for practicing folk medicine simply because they were unusual. I would probably have ended up on the stake myself. Did you notice how he uses her when describing Mother Nature? As if nature was nothing but a witch.
I don't know, Sonia. Let me be the devil's advocate. We're all scared to death about the disappearing ozone layer, but we only started studying ozone levels about 10 years ago.
That's exactly what they said about the German forests only a few years ago. And look at them now. More than half of the trees in the Black Forest are dying. And right here around this island, the tides are slowing down. Topsoil, forests, water, poisoned, dead. Things can change so fast.
I agree with everything you said, but why this patriarchal fixation, I mean, these are women. Why can't you just say what's patriarchal is what's evil in both men and women and let it go at that? There's plenty of that to go around.
Look, there are two great principles functioning in this entire living world. The male principle, pick the adjective, the aggressive, dominating, whatever, and the female principle. What I am saying is that these two principles may have been in a rough balance, but now the men, and yes, I do think it is the men, have created the tools, the weapons, both intellectually and physically, to bring these two principles way out of balance. What's wrong with giving the female principle an opportunity? The nature of light became an obsession with the physicists, too. See, none of them could visualize how the light of the sun reached the earth.
Why? What is the nature of light?
To understand the nature of light, you have to know what matter is made of.
I thought it was made of atoms.
What's an atom? Well, Newton thought it was small, solid particles. But that's not what scientists saw when they observed atoms for the first time. What they saw was totally unexpected and shocking. They were moving in relatively vast regions of empty space. Ask yourself, how many atoms are there in an orange? You'll have to blow up the orange until it's reached the size of the Earth. The atoms inside of it will then be the size of cherries. Myriads of cherries tightly packed into an orange the size of the Earth.
So what about the nucleus?
Invisible is the answer. If we blow up the atom to the size of a football, the nucleus would still be invisible.
What if you blew it up to the size of this island? To the size of the rock we're standing on?
Okay. We would blow the atom, the cherry, up to the size of this island, all the way down there, at the edge of the island. And the whole space in between would be empty.
In other words, nothing. It's empty. But if this rock is made up of spheres like that, then why can't I pass my hand through it? Why don't we fall through it?
Well, you see, this is the obvious question that physicists had to ask. To understand why matter is so solid. And after many frustrating years, they were forced to admit that matter does not exist with certainty in definite places, but rather shows tendencies to exist. In scientific language, we actually don't speak about tendencies, we speak about probabilities. The strange thing is that when you actually make a measurement of the electron, it is in a definite place. But between measurements, you cannot say that it is in a definite place, or that it has traveled a definite path. You see, an electron doesn't move from place to place, and it doesn't stay in one place either. It manifests itself as probability patterns spread out in space.
Are you saying that the electron sort of gets smeared out, and then when you measure it with the measuring gun, it collapses into a small point?
You got it. You see, all subatomic particles, electrons, protons, neutrons, manifest this strange existence between potentiality and reality.
So at the subatomic level, there are no solid objects.
No, they are not. What makes this rock so solid goes way beyond our power of imagination. Let's take an atom from within this granite, a silicon atom with its 14 electrons, arrange themselves like shells around the nucleus, each shell containing several electrons. Now, within the shells, the electrons are everywhere at the same time, so to speak.
If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as it is, infinite.
A particle is essentially a set of relations that reach outward to connect with other things. The essential nature of matter lies not in objects, but in interconnections.
Everybody knows the chord. It's a third, the most basic of harmonies. Carries with it a very distinctive feeling, no? And yet, its individual notes carry none of that feeling. Therefore, the essence of the chord lies in
Relationships.
And the relationship between time and pitch
Makes melody.
makes melody. Relationships make music.
Relationships make matter. Now, this vision of a universe arranged in harmonies of sounds and relations, at the subatomic level, it dissolves into a series of interconnections, like chords of music. It's beautiful.
We are two separate bodies, aren't we? That's not an illusion. Are you saying that there is actually a physical connection between you and me and between you and the wall behind you and the air and this bench?
Yes.
How does all this explain light?
Yes, finally. Light. Now, light doesn't need a medium, because although it travels in waves, it also travels as particles.
Light is both particles and waves?
Yes, unlike other particles, they never stand still. They never speed up, they never slow down. They always travel at the same speed, the speed of light. And the waves are not ordinary waves. They are abstract patterns of probabilities, traveling in the form of waves. All these particles colliding with the air, creating more particles, interacting further, creating and destroying more particles. And we are in the middle of this cosmic dance of creation and destruction.
Shiva Nataraj.
I beg your pardon?
How can they do that here?
It's your fault.
What?
It's your fault. Physicists' fault. They made the bomb. The bomb made the whole planet disposable. Littering is an expression of powerlessness.
Maybe you're right.
That's it. That's the big one. We're all gonna die.
Oppenheimer said he had blood on his hands. He had regrets after the fact. You know, we never talked about responsibility at the university, not at my time. We never discussed ethics. We were never taught value thinking. No one induced upon us the wisdom of the American Indian tribes who made all their important decisions with the 7th generation in mind. We were never taught to think about the future that way, but pure science hardly exists today. The scientist isn't sitting in his lab anymore, choosing to work on what fascinates him most. Science is expensive. The Pentagon, who pays most of it, decides what is fascinating. 70% paid by the military without thinking about who is responsible. And people, of course, who believe that scientists who are so powerful also must be very wise. And so they don't question their work anymore. And although they know that scientists are doing scary things in the shadows, they just hope that they will be careful. And then scientists hand over their responsibility to those who are paying them.
If you're worried about the possible dangers of genetic engineering, who do you go to for advice? You have to ask a scientist. He's the only one who understands. And you pretty much have to take his word for it, too, because often you don't know even what questions to ask.
You know, I think we are dealing with a historical process that's so deep that even Americans won't be able to resist it much longer. When I look around in the sciences, I see the same patterns emerging everywhere, the same notions of holism, the same thinking in terms of processes instead of structures. It's happening in America too, because once something takes hold in the sciences, it will spread. It always has, whether we like it or not.
Clean water in 72, clean air in 77, 12, 14 years ago, and we're still falling behind. So can your ideas make these things move faster? If you're going to wait for most of the people to be ready to go along with you before you move.
There is a new theory emerging now. We call it systems theory, the theory of living systems.
Living systems?
Mm-hmm. All living organisms, as well as social systems and ecosystems. See, this theory would help us get a much firmer grasp on the sciences that deal with life.
Are these all your own ideas, or do other people share them? I mean, how can you talk usefully about a tree without talking about its roots, or its leaves, or its bark?
Oh, I could, without even naming the parts you mentioned. Well, a Cartesian would look at a tree and conceptually take it to pieces. But then he would never really understand the nature of the tree. A systems thinker would look at a tree and see the seasonal exchange between tree and earth, earth and sky. Would see the annual cycle, which really is one big breath the earth takes through its forests, providing us with oxygen, a breath of life, linking the earth with the sky and us with the universe. A systems thinker would look at the tree and see the life of the tree only in relation to the life of the whole forest. Would see the tree as a habitat for birds, a home for insects. But if you look at a tree and try to understand it as something separate, you will be bewildered by the millions of fruits it's producing in its lifetime, because only 1 or 2 trees will grow from those fruits. Though if you look at the tree and see it as a member of a larger living system, that abundance of fruits will make sense, because hundreds upon hundreds of forest animals and birds will survive because of them. Interdependence. And the tree cannot survive on its own either. To draw water from the ground, it needs the fungus that grows at the tip of each root. And the fungus needs the root to survive, and the root needs the fungus. If one dies, the other dies. And there are millions of relationships like this in our world, each depending on each other for life. The systems theory recognizes this web of relationships as the essence of all living things. Only the uninformed would call such a notion naive or romantic, because this dependency we all share is a scientific fact.
A web of relationships.
Yes, but this time it is the web of life itself. The theory of living systems actually provides you with an outline of an answer to that eternal question, what is life?